came upon a child of God. He was walking along the road, and I asked him, "Where are you going?" And this he told me: "I'm going on down to Yasgur's farm. I'm gonna join in a rock and roll band. I'm gonna camp out on the line. I'm gonna try and get my soul free. We are stardust. We are golden, and we got to get ourselves back to the Then can I walk beside you? I have come here to lose the smog, and I feel to be a cog in something turning. Well, maybe it is just the time of year, or maybe it's the time of man. I don't know who I am, but you know life is for learning. We are stardust. We are golden, and we got to get ourselves back to the By the time we got to Woodstock, we were 500,000 strong, and everywhere there was song and celebration. And I dreamed I saw the bombers riding shotgun in the sky, and they were turning in to butterflies above our nation. We are stardust, billion-year-old carbon. We are golden, caught in the devil's bargain, and we got to get ourselves back to the
Of all of the different political groups, I would think that libertarians would be the most vegetarian and or pro-animal welfare. But in my own experience, it seems to me to be the exact opposite, that if anything, libertarians are the most anti-vegetarian and anti-animal welfare. And this is very perplexing to me, because the very core of libertarianism is the non-aggression principle. It is nonviolence. It is the wish to minimize the amount of unnecessary suffering and violence that you contribute to. But it seems that the position of many libertarians is not the non-aggression principle at all. Instead, it is an arbitrary black and white line drawn in the sand between humans and non-humans. That if you are a human, then congratulations, you are now in the human club, and you are applicable to the non-aggression principle. But if you are a non-human, then sorry, even if you are still fully capable of experiencing physical and emotional suffering, you are not a member of the human club. And because of that, you are fair game for humans to inflict suffering and death upon you in order to satisfy their own pleasure and amusement. This does not sound like the non-aggression principle to me. Anyway, on to some of the common arguments made against vegetarianism and/or animal welfare. One of the arguments is, hey, I'd be willing to afford some rights to animals the moment they sign a declaration asking for such rights. One could use the same logic as this argument to argue, hey, I'd be willing to afford rights to babies the moment they sign a declaration of baby rights. Until then, they are fair game for me to do with whatever I wish. Hopefully, simply pointing this out shows the absurdity of the argument. Whether or not a being should be afforded any moral consideration should not be dependent upon whether they can sign a piece of paper, but whether they are capable of experiencing physical and emotional suffering. Another common argument is, but animals kill each other all the time. This argument falls apart on many different levels. Free will versus determinism aside, the more choice you have in the matter, the more responsible you are for the results of your actions. The less choice you have, the less responsible you are. Most humans today are therefore in a unique position in that, unlike non-human omnivores and carnivores, humans are able to only eat plant foods and still live perfectly healthy, happy lives. Whereas if non-human omnivores and carnivores were to abstain from eating meat, that would mean them starving to death. Pretty big difference. Not to mention the fact that most non-human omnivores and carnivores do not understand the suffering and violence that they are contributing to, whereas we do not have that excuse. Also, the opponent to animal welfare holds to the speciesist position that humans are superior to all other animals and can therefore do whatever they want to them. But for such an individual to make this argument is to be logically inconsistent, as the argument that, hey, animals kill each other, is a way of equating humans to animals. But humans are not the same as other animals. Humans have a higher moral responsibility, because unlike non-human omnivores and carnivores, humans have a legitimate choice to minimize the amount of unnecessary suffering and violence they contribute to. But even if we ignore this contradiction in the argument, we can use the same logic to make the argument that, but Hitler killed millions of people, so why shouldn't I be allowed to? The argument is invalid from its very foundation, because it's not an argument at all, but rather just an attempt at finger-pointing. Another argument is the lifeboat scenario of, what if you're trapped on a deserted island and all you have to eat is other animals? What do you do? Well, then I would eat the other animals. This argument displays a profound ignorance of what vegetarians and animal welfare advocates are advocating. The argument is not that all violence is wrong. The argument is that unnecessary violence is wrong, and the goal should be to minimize it. A similar argument to this is that every time you use mouthwash, you're killing millions of microorganisms. This too displays an ignorance of the argument being made, as the argument is not that all life deserves moral consideration, but that sentient life forms, capable of experiencing physical and emotional suffering, deserve moral consideration. Another argument is that plants feel pain as well. This is abjectly wrong. Plants do not have a central nervous system nor a brain to interpret any nerve signals. Therefore, it is impossible for them to experience pain, at least in any way similar to how we experience it. But let's just assume that plants are capable of experiencing pain. Vegetarianism is still the best option to go with to minimize the amount of unnecessary violence and suffering you contribute to, because a meat eater also has to account for all of the plants that the animal had to eat in order to grow to a large enough size before it was slaughtered. When you take this into account, the meat eater is not only contributing toward the death and likely torture of a helpless innocent animal, he is also contributing toward the deaths of around 10 times as many plants as the vegetarian. Another argument is that if the world went vegetarian, it wouldn't be sustainable, since it would require far more farming than is currently taking place. In reality, the opposite is the case. It requires around 10 pounds of plant matter to produce just 1 pound of meat, so it is far less efficient to be taking land that is perfectly suitable for producing plants for human consumption and using that land instead to produce livestock feed, which is what the world is currently doing. And it is doing this because if we only took the land that is not capable of producing food for human consumption and only used that land to make livestock feed, then we would only have enough livestock feed to feed a small fraction of the number of livestock we currently raise. And thus, people would need to drastically reduce the amount of meat they consume. Another argument has to do with priorities. Here's how it goes. Yes, Jacob, I see your point, but surely the welfare of humans should be our first priority before the welfare of animals. I would agree with this, but at the same time, I see this as being a false dichotomy. Choosing to take meat off of your plate and instead eat more nuts, seeds, beans, fruits, and vegetables does not stop you from doing any other activities. And finally, there's the argument that meat just tastes good. This is really not an argument, it's just a rationalization. In fact, all of these arguments are really just rationalizations. The argument that meat tastes good does not at all address the argument that we should place moral consideration upon all sentient beings capable of suffering, and that we should wish to minimize the amount of violence and suffering that we contribute toward. If a car thief were to explain his actions with, "But stealing cars just feels so good," then does that make his actions excusable? Of course not. Now, don't take this as me saying that meat eaters are evil and that I'm some kind of saint. I'm not. After all, evolution programmed humans to enjoy the taste of meat, because tens of thousands of years ago, living was a zero-sum game. If you didn't eat whatever you could find, then you would die. This is certainly not the occasion to be advocating for a more compassionate diet. But for many of us, living is no longer a zero-sum game. We no longer have to eat meat in order to live, or be perfectly healthy for that matter. Here is where the option of a more compassionate diet should be considered. I don't think that humans who choose to eat meat are evil monsters. I just wish that we can begin to recognize the unique position we are in that allows us to make a choice. Let's say for a moment that meat did not taste good. Would you then need any time at all to make the decision between choosing to minimize or maximize the unnecessary suffering of sentient beings just as intelligent, personable, and capable of suffering as your dog or cat? We have a choice to either give in to our animal nature or to overcome that nature and embrace our humanity and show mercy to our innocent cousins. And the more of us who embrace a more compassionate diet, the better and better the food will get.